Hello, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast, episode number 427, recorded live Wednesday, March 27th. I am Todd, and you'll notice that there is no Shane this week, and I point the other way. Special guest, introduce yourself.
Is it no Shane or no shame?
There is no shame that there is no Shane. But, we are proud of that. Last week he went and got some rock star on, got John Levesque from the Flow team, and now Shane's out busy doing some stuff, and I've got you.
And you settled for me. So this is Marc Anderson. Todd and I work together at some praxis, and you know, when he find anyone else to talk to, he usually asks me if I'm busy.
The bottom of the barrel. I could not have been more desperate, but you know, maybe
there's a loud scraping sound when you. We're looking for somebody to help out.
Exactly. But it's good because one of the stuff that I want to talk about this week was all the adventures that we had last week, so that'll be very good.
Yeah.
So before we get any further, you guys can't see it, but this episode of the podcast was funded partially by the folks at SysKit. They've got a bunch of great stuff out there. They've got some great software, SP.Kit, that they've had forever. SysKit, their brand, SysKit Security Manager and SysKit Insights and all those, so check those out. Go to syskit.com. And we're going to be hearing a little more from them later in the podcast. This is, in the art of storytelling, this is called foreshadowing, building anticipation.
It is, I feel this tension.
Yes, building.
There's something in the air.
Building. Brett in the chat room is putting up title ideas. Lori is also gone this week. Her and Shane both had better things to do than hang out with me. And so, but definitely put your title things. And honestly, Brett, if you got like a notepad thing open, keep those open. At the end of the show, I'll ask you for title suggestions. So for the topics, the big thing is you and I were both gone, and Shane were both gone last week. We were at the big MVP summit and out in Redmond. Most of what happened out there, it was under a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, but we can talk about some of it.
Yep. We can talk about what we had for dinner.
Oh, yeah. So that one place, Purple, very good. I can't remember what I had there, the mac and cheese or something. It was quite delightful.
So this show is also sponsored by Purple.
Yes, by Purple. The color and the restaurant in Bellevue, Washington. Yeah. So one of the things, so I go to these things, and I forgot in the notes, we're like 2 items into the notes, and I already skipped a thing, which is the North American Collaboration Summit. We'll come back to that. But one of the things one of the reasons I go to all these things is for the swag. So you can see I am proudly wearing my Hyperfish hoodie right here.
I can't see that, actually.
That's right, you can't see, your video is gone. So just imagine me puffing my chest out impressively. That will take a lot of creative juices to imagine that, but imagine it. Hyperfish is a company that was started by a friend of ours, Chris Johnson, affectionately known as CJ. Him and Andrew Connell, affectionately known as AC, do their own podcast. You should check that out. It's with the Microsoft Cloud podcast. Chris is a great guy.
After they listen to yours, I think.
Only after this is all caught up with ours, yes. And then if you've got time, you're just sitting around looking for things to listen to. That's a good one. But CJ started this company a while back, Hyperfish. They do like profile information in Office 365, been wildly successful. And I think that is in no small part due to the incredibly soft and comfortable hoodies they give out.
I think that's a big part of it. And the fish stickers. We like the fish stickers as well.
Yes, even more than fish sticks, fish stickers. Yes.
You love fish sticks.
It's what kind of fish I'll eat, yeah. So I got the Hyperfish hoodie, which is very good because other folks have had them and I've been very jealous. And so now I've got one. It is soft. It's like sleeping in a second skin. I just want to love it and hug it, and so nice. Nice. But then the other reason I come to these things is for the backpacks. So you can't see it, Mark, but I'm showing off the ShareGate backpack.
That is a nice one.
Yes, that is very...
It's an Ogio, I believe, is the brand.
I think that's what this one is.
They make great stuff. We got a lot of sponsors this week, don't we?
We do, yes. So it's definitely an Ogio backpack from ShareGate. It is a heck of a good, solid backpack. So they make good stuff, both Ogio and ShareGate. So if you're looking for migration software, the only stuff that Mark and I really touch these days anymore is ShareGate. Not because the other products are bad. I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they do good work. I'm sure their mothers love them deeply. But for us, we're most comfortable with ShareGate. And when we go to customers, they almost always already have ShareGate. So it's just kind of what we do. And in my quest for backpacks, I sold my soul a little bit. And I caught some hell for this when it happened. I'm probably going to catch some more hell for it now. One of the things that you had, Mark, that I was a little jealous of, I didn't say this out there, but you had like this rockin' tiny backpack.
The tiny backpack, yeah, that's a winner.
And you made it look so stylish and functional. And I have this big backpack that's got like everything I own in it. It's like 2 man purses. It's gigantic. It's got all my lipstick and all that kind of stuff in it. But then you had this like tiny little thing, and it was so stylish, and you just looked so hip and happening. And I noticed it was a developer backpack. You got it from some like the developer kitchen or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We got actually last year at Summit, but in the corner, like in the real dev corner. Officially, I'm not an Office 365 developer MVP, so I sort of snagged it.
Yeah, so what I did was I snuck into a developer session.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
And then they gave this fancy, tiny backpack, and you can't tell because of the way the cameras are, but this thing is, I don't know, so by way of comparison, this is my 10-inch Surface Go, and it's about the size of the Surface Go. So, very excited about that.
Perfect for smaller stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of slings over your shoulder, and just, so... Good backpack haul.
I'm a big fan of that backpack. Yeah. I put that small backpack in my big backpack when I travel, which sounds totally backward, but it makes sense because I've got like my headphones and my all my dongles and all that stuff, and then the little backpack in there with the actual Surface Pro that I have, so that I just take that out and go to do sessions at conferences or whatever. And so I can carry all my magazines and all the other crap that I don't really need outside the hotel room or the airplane.
Yes, so and you brought up a couple of good things there. So you and I are both going to Europe next week. And
that's right.
You are a well-seasoned, well-accomplished traveler, and so I'm going to be following you around Europe a little bit next week. But I definitely take cues from some of the great travel advice that you have, and I was thinking, I started listening to some travel podcasts, and I was thinking that maybe you and I, or Shane and I, or hell, you and Shane and I, should do like a travel-focused podcast once on all the things we've picked up on over the years, because it seems really obvious, but it seems obvious to us because we travel a couple dozen times a year, so stuff like that seems really...
Yeah, there was a good conversation on Twitter maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago about all of the little things that we have in our backpacks because we speak a lot. Mm-hmm. Like what do we have when we walk into a conference room or a room to do a session at a conference? There's a bunch of stuff in our backpack that ensures that we will fail less.
Yes.
And so having that stuff is sort of useful. I keep meaning to do a post just showing what that junk in my backpack actually is.
Yes.
Yes. Some good stuff.
Yeah, I have that same thing, and that's
not the fun part of the travel, though. Really,
a little bit because there's stuff people don't know about. When I got my Surface Go, I got a different hub that's got a bunch of stuff in it that people are like, oh my god, that hub's great. So things like that.
Yeah.
I thought we should put together a travel tips show because I think there are some tips
fun.
Here and there.
Could we then get our travel underwritten by the webcast? The podcast?
I think absolutely so. I mean, this is for the most part a non-profit thing, and by that I mean that in the literal sense, like it pays no money. But
all of the fees that you get from all of the money that you're making from the podcast could go to our travel plans.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, there's some really great tips, and I was. And again, some stuff from the other travel podcast, but I won't repeat them here. We'll save them for the other one. But yeah, so I definitely plan on doing the exact same thing. My little backpack will either go in my big backpack or my big carry-on. One thing about traveling with Marc, folks, if you ever travel with Marc travels high speed, no checked bags. So if you want to keep up with Marc when you travel, everything's got to fit in a carry-on bag, and so I will be doing that for our gallivanting.
If it doesn't fit in your carry-on bag, you don't need it.
Yes. So I am not quite that vigilant, though. For the trip to Europe, I try to do that because, for Delta at least, there's usually only one flight a day from wherever I leave the country to wherever I get into Europe, and I've had on multiple occasions my bags not make that one flight a day, which means it has to wait at least a full day.
You wear that same T-shirt for 2 straight days. It's just not good.
It's and it's so when we go to Sweden this weekend, I will mostly be stepping off the plane, getting on the Arlanda Express, going to our hotel, and then going immediately on a tour. So I need extra clothes to change into. But yeah, so the MVP Summit was great. We can't talk about a lot of the things that they showed there, but I will say that I came out of there really excited. They did a great job of getting me excited about what's coming down the line. They did a great job of being transparent on some of the stuff we complained about, and I'm super stoked.
Yeah, it's the MVP Summit is I don't think anyone really understands what it is who's not an MVP, and some of us who are MVPs and have been MVPs for a long time don't really know what it is either. But
Nope.
we get to have great conversations with the people on the product team. We get to hear some of the stuff that they're planning down the road as best they can tell us, because a lot of things change over time.
Yeah.
But it's really a great time for us as MVPs to build relationships with the other MVPs, and to me that's probably the most consistent value. And we as MVPs try to build relationships with people in the community and with each other, so that we can be more helpful to everybody. That's the goal. So.
Yeah, and you and I were talking yesterday about the value of the MVP Summit. It's like 1/3 Microsoft roadmap-y stuff, 1/3 catching up with all of our friends. It's like a high school reunion or a family reunion once a year, and then 1/3 catching up with the Microsoft folks that we know, and just renewing those relationships.
Before the stuff scrolls off the top and I forget, Marc Christman, you had some comments about ShareGate. If you want to send those to me, the things that bother you about ShareGate, I'd be happy to talk to the ShareGate team about whatever. And that's fine for anyone else who had an opinion as well. Send them to me and I'll pass them along. Yeah,
and we've done that, and they're incredibly receptive. They want to make a great product, and so this is stuff they care about. So
yep,
absolutely.
So it's topic 1.
Yeah. Well, and so the other thing, we were so excited about. So I want to come back. So for the summit, talking about the Microsoft folks, get to run into everybody. One of the people that I got to run into at the product group dinner or thing Tuesday night, I think it was Pam Green from the documentation team. And I've known Pam for several years. I think she listens to the podcast. At least I like to indulge myself and think that she listens to the podcast. But she is on the team that writes the documentation for OneDrive and SharePoint. You may hear that outside referred to as ODSP. That's the cool kid lingo for that team. But every time I see Pam, and this has been going on for years, so she's got to be sick of it. I compliment her on the Herculean effort that her team must have trying to document both the breadth of this product and the speed at which everything changes. And they do an amazing job making that documentation as good as it is.
They do just seem to get better and better at what they do. Of course, we know all the people better, so we also can give them feedback. But
yeah,
I think most people would agree that the docs coming out of Microsoft these days are just so much more helpful,
better than they've ever been before.
Than they used to.
Yeah. And again, on a product that is bigger than it's ever been, and where documentation is inaccurate more quickly than it's ever been. I mean, there's just so hats off to Pam and the team. And I like I said, I've known Pam for years, so it was just good catching up with her and chatting. But I bring her up number one because again, I like to flatter myself and think that she listens. But also, I noticed I think Monday she posted they have an opening on their team.
Yep.
And so I will put that link in the chat room and then in the show notes. As always, you can go to toddclint.com/podcast427 to see all the links for the stuff that we talk about in here. But if you want to be a part of Pam's team, you can go out there. There's a link there to that job opening.
I think I might apply for that.
I think you would be a fine addition to the team. I think that would be good stuff. No, they do great stuff, and I think so. You mentioned that we give them feedback. Also, all the stuff on docs.microsoft.com. If you see an issue with that, just as an everyday run-of-the-mill person, they've got that edit button up there, and you can click it, and it fires up an editor, and I think it links it to GitHub and does some stuff. And you can also input changes, whoever you are. You don't have to be Marc or Todd to do that.
Yeah, it's a little weird, and I think especially with a lot of folks I work with, because when you click on that edit button, you land in GitHub.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the, okay, I don't know what to do from here stage.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this before, but the fact that everyone can edit the docs is great, but it's not necessarily great that it's via GitHub, because a lot of people don't, especially non-devs, don't know what that is and how to proceed from there.
It is a little intimidating. I agree.
So that's something I actually talked to a couple of the docs people about when we were out in Redmond, and they agree. And so we're probably going to. I may help them try and figure out a better way, and not a different mechanism, but how to help people through that process a little bit.
I have thought, and this is not necessarily an original thought, but you and I have talked about GitHub a bunch, and I have thought that I should blog my journey of trying to get comfortable with GitHub, because I suffer from the same thing. And
yep.
I don't know. So the problem, had this discussion with another friend over the weekend. There are a bunch of, because he was saying, oh, I love your stuff, but you don't blog as often as you used to. And I said, well, that is mostly because I have developed a very thick vein of perfectionism, and I just can't talk myself into blogging anything unless I've convinced myself it is 100% accurate in all situations. And
oh, man, that's tough. That's tough.
Yes, and so the GitHub thing is part of that. Like, I want to blog that journey because I know there's a bunch of non-devs like myself that are totally freaked out by GitHub and might get some value from me documenting my journey. But then the fear that I will do something wrong in that blog post, and not that people will find out I'm an idiot, because that's pretty well known, but that I will put something wrong in there, and that will encourage somebody else to do something wrong. And then I screech to a halt.
I think you should do it, because that the fact that you're confused about stuff at any given point, I mean, as long as you say that, and I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing, and you can get comments and maybe update it with the stuff you get from the comments, and that'll help you learn how to do it.
Yeah, maybe so, but that's...
I couldn't figure out GitHub for a couple of years, I mean, literally a couple of years, and I finally figured it out by starting to use WebStorm as my IDE,
okay.
and because WebStorm has very well baked in GitHub support, I could push a button and push stuff to GitHub, or push a button and pull stuff from GitHub, and GitHub uses the words backwards. Push and pull. We've talked about that.
So, but you and I have
you got a way to sort of internalize the whole thing.
Yeah. So you and I talked about that, how pushes and pulls seem backwards, and then I was talking to Julie the next day, and I mentioned that. She's like, "No, it makes perfect sense. They're exactly the right way." And I'm like, "Oh, now I'm back to square one."
Well, it makes sense to Julie. See, that's the thing. Some things make sense to one person, and some things make sense to another person, right? And for you and me, it's backwards, but whatever. Just sort of get past.
Yeah, and I almost am tired of the constant reminders that Julie's smarter than me and knows more stuff than me, and that was just another one of those. I'm like, of course you understand it, and I don't. Drat. So maybe I'll do that. I've got, and I was telling, so it was Sherman Wu who I was having this discussion about my blogging with. I was telling him I've got like a dozen blog posts that are essentially done that I won't publish because there's just some part of it I don't thoroughly understand or completely confident in. And so maybe this GitHub thing's another one that
it's like content management. It's one of those things where it's incredibly intimidating until you get that one lightning bolt moment. Yeah. Like, what's a content type? Well, it's a type of content. And, you just sit there and you're churning that, and you're like, well, but what? What does that mean? And a lot of people sort of nod their heads when I talk to them about that, but they haven't quite gotten that moment yet. And then once they get it, it's like, ah! As I remember that when that happened to me, you can't know something until you know it,
Yeah.
Which sounds like an aphorism, but it really isn't.
No, it's the old Dick Cheney. There's known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and
yeah, all those.
Yeah. So I might do that because I think the documentation stuff, it takes a village. So I think I should start helping out there. So I feel bad. I got all excited about the MVP Summit, but the week before that I was in Branson. Well, the Monday before that I was in Kansas City at the user group. Spoke to those guys, had a great time. And then Wednesday, I drove down to Branson, Missouri for Marc Rackley's Collab Summit and had a great time down there. again, it was just like all my friends. It was a good time. Wanted to give a couple of shout-outs to some podcast listeners who came up and introduced themselves, and we chatted for a while. Rob and Art got to... I'd already met Rob. I think Art was the first time I'd met him. But Shane and I always say to the podcast listeners, if you see us at a conference, for goodness sakes, come over, introduce yourself. We're pretty friendly folks, and hopefully Rob and Art came away with that same experience. They don't think I was a jerk. But that was a great time, and that one's a smaller conference. I can't remember. It's a few hundred people. But it's just great. I had a good time.
I wasn't there.
No.
But I hear it.
And that may have contributed to my good time. I don't know.
Probably.
And I didn't see Shane there. We were like ships passing in the night. I drove down. It was like a 7 or 8 hour drive for me. And so I got done with my stuff Thursday, did some things, and I left Thursday afternoon, and he flew in Friday.
Well, so that worked out perfectly for you.
Yeah. Couldn't have been better. Couldn't have been better. But I also got a nice backpack from there. Again, because I'm only in this for the backpacks. So this is one of those stringy backpack things that Marc did. 10th anniversary. So hats off to Marc Ragley. Another one. Knocked it out of the park. And again, thanks to Rob and Art for coming up and saying hey. So then, after the MVP Summit, my family and I, we took the train up to Vancouver, and that was a lot of fun. I don't know that taking the train was much slower than flying up there had we done that, because there's no security, you don't have to show up 7 hours early or any of that kind of stuff. And it was a great scenic little ride, and then spent a few days in Vancouver. And again, part of this community thing, there's just, everywhere I go in the world, there is somebody that I know through the SharePoint community, the Office 365 community. Vancouver's one of those situations. I got a buddy up there, Sherman Wu, so I gave him a call, and he graciously took time out of his weekend and came down and hung out with us for a while, and it was a good time catching up.
Nice.
Yeah.
See that, and I put, you glossed right over it, but I put the phrase "joy of community" in there just to see if you actually say it.
Well, so you put the note in, so I was going to let you say it. I didn't want to steal your notes.
Yeah, I thought I put it there because I thought it'd be funny if you said it.
No, but it's.
But the joy of community, it is nice. We go. Todd and I are very lucky. We get to go places all around the world and talk about what we do and SharePoint and Office 365 and stuff. And almost everywhere, there's somebody we know or somebody who wants to know us, and we have great conversations, and it really is special. And this community is an unusual one, even in tech. SharePoint Saturdays sort of started, I think, a lot of that. Back in, I think it was 2009. Is that right?
Oh, I think maybe even earlier than that. I don't know.
Crazy long time ago, 10 years ago or more. But yeah, it's a very special thing.
Yeah, and it's easy. You and I have been in SharePoint. I've been in most of my professional career, not all of it, but the vast majority. And so I just don't know what the other communities are like. But when I talk to other people who've done other things and come into SharePoint or Office 365 now, they all say the same thing, like, "Oh, when I was in the SQL community, it was nothing like this," or whatever.
Yeah, maybe some of the other communities have gotten better, but we think we're the first and the best, right?
And that's because we are. Yeah. Well, That's why. Wanted to give a quick mention. I got, like a month or so ago, I got a Surface Go, which is like the little 10-inch, the cheaper of the Surface's devices, and I've talked about it a little bit on here. I used it a lot when I was traveling this week just to see how well it held up in a number of regards, and I'm still loving it. It's still, battery life is good, functionality is good, keyboard is large enough that I can use without being frustrated, my big man hands here. Had a great time. Taking the train to Vancouver, the Surface Go that I got has an LTE card in it, so I had internet access the whole way. I don't even know if the train had it because I didn't care. I had it with my tablet, and it's been a good thing. I plan on doing some sort of a review on it, like a YouTube sort of thing. The other thing, and I was talking to Marc a little bit about this during one of the sessions, the Go comes with Windows 10 S Mode installed, and S Mode is Microsoft's fourth or fifth attempt at having like a walled garden version of Windows. And so with Windows S Mode, essentially you can't install anything that's not a Windows Store app. So that's so you get Office and all those kind of things, but you can't just download any EXE and run it on your machine. They do that for a couple of reasons: performance and then safety. I just can't download Crazy Jerry's EXE and then have it compromise my system at all.
Like you've done on like other laptops.
Exactly. We'll talk about that later as well. So that's been one of those things that and you can switch from S mode to Windows 10 Home. So there was no, I mean, it's not a big deal. There's just basically a switch that you flip. So I will probably do that at some point. But I wanted to use S mode for at least a month to see exactly what a pain is. And I mentioned S mode in the chat room. Everybody's like, oh my God, S mode's terrible. Ack, barf, to quote the great philosopher Bill the Cat. What I found is S mode works really well. Matter of fact, I didn't even realize I was in S mode for probably the first week because everything I needed, Outlook and Word and all that. It wasn't until I started wanting to install Chrome that I realized I was in S mode. And the one that really put me over the edge is I can't get into PowerShell. And that was because when I install Chrome, I've got a PowerShell script that downloads the installer and kicks it off. And I'm like, I need to get Chrome. Hey, where's PowerShell? And I'm like, oh my God, it's S mode. But what I thought was especially funny is so that's when I'm like, all right, I'll try this for a month. We'll see how it goes. And then out to Summit, it's in Praxis. We use Teams for most of our collaboration, and there is no Teams client for Windows S mode. There's no Teams.
There's no Teams app, is there?
There is not. There's whatever the Teams client thing is we use in Windows, but there's no store app.
The thick client or the not so smart client or whatever we call those kids.
Yeah. So of course I could do it in the web browser, which is what I did. But I did think that was and the other thing about that was super funny is there is a Slack Windows Store app, so I was able to run a Slack client on my Yeah.
We'll have to let the product team for Teams know about that. The team for Teams.
The teams. Yes. The teaming teams. Team. Yeah, so that was, but otherwise, still loving it. It's working great. So I look forward to it. And it fits inside of my stylish new Dev Man purse that I got. That was part of that thinking. So
excellent.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of antivirus, you put a note in the notes about antivirus.
Yeah, crazy Jerry's EXE that you just downloaded.
Exactly.
Infected our corporate network, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Julie and Todd and I were talking this morning. Our pal Derek is on a vacation this week, but the three of us were talking about whether or not, or what kind of virus scan corporate standard we should have at Sympraxis. Yeah. And so it occurred to me that this would be a good crowd to ask. What do you use inside your enterprise or on your personal boxes to make sure that you're safe and Crazy Jerry doesn't get your stuff?
Yeah.
There's Windows Defender, which if you're on a Windows machine, you sort of get for free, and Microsoft manages that. We used to all have Norton or whatever in the old days.
Yeah.
Are people running stuff? Servers are different, maybe desktops these days.
Yeah, that's, and we were talking about it, and I'm probably tipping my hand a little bit here. Maybe shouldn't be saying this out loud. But I haven't installed third-party antivirus software on any of my machines in years. I can't even think of the last time that I did.
You're opening up that attack surface, man.
Yep, crazy Jerry's rubbing his hands and twirling his mustache as we speak. And then the other part about that is, and you kind of alluded to it, is the workplace has changed a lot since, I did this as an internal IT guy. Sympraxis has no servers.
Yep. Yeah, we're cloud only, so in theory, a lot of this isn't our problem, right?
No. So really our attack vector is Office 365, which Microsoft scans and scans again and all that, and then our individual workstations. And so really it's client-based antivirus now.
Yeah.
So and the chat room's funny because we've got a couple people saying, yep, we run Sophos, and then one person saying they just stick with Windows Defender.
Yeah.
So that's...
it used to be that IT departments would push some pretty bloated antivirus and firewall stuff down, and it would actually detract from the performance of your machines.
Yeah.
I know that we have some clients who still do that, and it's pretty awful when you have to work on one of those machines. So I think people in some companies just say, our laptops or our desktops are really slow, and it's often the virus stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's what finally put me over the edge was the performance hit. Like I had a new machine, and it was running fine, and then I put whatever the antivirus du jour was on, and it killed it immediately. And I'm like, I'll just I'll take my chances with the bad guys, because this is just untenable.
Well, and Microsoft is doing a really good job with Windows Defender too. I mean, they finally realized, other people are guarding our castle, and they built it into Windows. And I think that I see the updates happening every day. We're downloading new virus signatures and everything. So, I think they're taking pretty good care of us.
Yeah, and so you and I and Julie were talking about this in Teams, and my comment was, I don't run antivirus software. I haven't had any problems, but viruses these days are different than they were 10 or 20 years ago, in that if something infects your machine, it doesn't want you to know. It's not going to be like the Melissa virus was that's going to make a big splash, because now they're doing it because they're culling personal information, or they're putting you inside of some bot army that's going to do bad stuff. So it's imperative that you not know that you're infected when you're infected, so that they can do their nefarious deeds.
Right. So you're making me a little worried. I feel like I need to go wash my hands.
Shower with your clothes on, something like that.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so when we were talking in the chat room, you and I were both like, well, if there's a trial, maybe we'll run it and see if they find anything. And then I was saying, I'm a little nervous. Like, ignorance might be bliss on this. I might be better off not knowing.
Something.
Yeah. So I'd be curious. Anyway, we're watching the chat room. A few people are running it. Like everybody else, Mark Christman's saying, back in the day, Norton was the thing to beat, and they just got slow.
Norton and McAfee were definitely two of the big ones.
Yeah.
At least on the consumer end of things.
Yeah. And Eric, I agree. He says knowledge and education are the best antivirus, and I agree totally. Just don't click stuff. Don't click things in email.
It's getting harder, though, because we see a lot of emails come. I mean, I know I get a lot of emails that look almost like they came from Microsoft.
Yeah.
Which is a great way in, because hey, you got a new sharing link from Office 365 or something. So those phishing attempts can be really ingenious these days.
Yep.
I don't know. I hate to give the tip out, but I don't know why these guys always spell something wrong or put punctuation in weird places or something, because that's usually what catches it. The other thing is, you hover over the link and make sure it actually is a link to the thing that they say it is, and you see some weird domain and you don't click on that.
Yeah.
Trying to convince people like my mother, who's always my test on this stuff,
mine too, yeah.
to take those couple of steps. It's a little tricky.
Yeah, one of the things when I do training for end users, site collection admins who are newish to Office 365, is I have a slide that shows exactly that. Shows a faked email, because all the Office 365 emails look the same. So as a bad guy, you can copy and paste it. And then I show them, like, you can view the header, or you can do whatever. And here's from Outlook.com, so that's probably okay. Here it says that the email really came from Gmail, probably not okay. So you can see some of that stuff.
Yeah. Of course, we're not the one. I mean, obviously we can screw up, but usually it's our end users who we are really trying to help through this, because they don't spend time thinking about these things. So.
No. They certainly do not. But yeah, be curious. So if you're listening to this, shoot me a tweet at Todd Clint or Mark. You're what's your Twitter handle?
Marc.
Yes.
SME Marc.
Yep. And let us know what you use for antivirus. You've got some dev stuff in the notes too. Tell us about that.
So one of the fun things about being a dev, though, there's some PowerShell things out there as well, but sort of the whole P&P world. If anyone is not familiar with P&P, it's the Patterns and Practices team, and it really was started by Vesa Javonen, and he's had some really smart people join him and sort of extend the open source movement at Microsoft. So there are a lot of really great packages that we can use in development. There's an open source P&P PowerShell package, or what would you call that, Todd? Not a package. What is it?
It's a module. Yeah.
Module. I knew there was another
Manna
word.
from heaven. Call it whatever you want. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's some good stuff, and one of the challenges I have is always keep understanding where the release number is for each one of these things. So that's what I've got listed in our notes here. And Todd, I guess you could put those in the session, or you know what I mean.
Yep.
Put them in the other stuff. And there are a couple links there to help you find what versions the latest things are. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, we had SharePoint Framework 1.8 come out, I think, right before we were out at Summit.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
And so that's a change that brings us a bunch of new functionality. So that one is sort of like, people are pretty loud about that. But then there are a bunch of supporting things that come along from the PNP community and allow us to do things faster and better and stronger and all that good stuff. So anyway, so I think it's always good to stay on top of what's going on. It's not that you always have to update to the latest version of everything, though I do love that new software smell.
Yes.
Yeah, you just...
It is, yes.
But sometimes it'll, think these especially with these open source things, they will solve a problem you've had. If you have an issue in the GitHub repo, then maybe it solves that problem, and you get a note and you want to upgrade to that. So stay in touch with what's going on in that PNP community, because there's a lot of stuff in there that will save you time and work.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I saw it, and I'm stealing this from somebody else, but just imagine, 25 years ago, if somebody was starting a software company, they said, okay, I've got this great idea, we're going to make some software, and then we're going to convince other super smart people who are well paid and overworked to make software for our software for free. That's our business case. And you're like, you are insane, but that's exactly what the PNP is. That's exactly what a bunch of these other things are. So it's all the smartest people, the people who care the most, pitching in. For the PowerShell stuff, and it's not in your list here, but for the PowerShell module for PNP, they update that once a month, and the version.
Let's right.
Is that in there?
I think that's yeah.
You got the CLI, but I don't see the.
No, I don't have it there.
The version number, I think they've adopted a standard recently that is the year and then the month. So right now it would be version 1903, and they put them out about once a month. So I'm with you, and I try to do, and that's one thing I like. We're doing talks next week. I just go out and I have to update all the modules all the time. So I'm actually another one of my blog posts that I haven't finished yet, but I should do, is just a link to all of the PowerShell modules I use to manage Office 365. So here's all the ones from Microsoft. Here's the download link. Here's how you install it from the PowerShell gallery. Here's all the third-party ones, and just have that be updated whenever I update.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not going to run through all those versions, but the PNP stuff that I listed here are the things that I use on a regular basis. So SharePoint Framework, PNP, the SharePoint Framework Yeoman generator that Stefan Bauer has been working on, the PNP JS library, which we can use to make smarter JavaScript calls to the endpoints, Office 365 CLI, which is almost a competitor to PowerShell in some ways, but it runs on any platform because it runs under Node.js. So it allows you to do a subset of what PowerShell lets you do, but a lot of the important stuff is there already.
And I think it has some stuff that PowerShell doesn't, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
And that's Waldeck's thing, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, we have. There's always one person we sort of identify with each one of these things, but of course there are a lot of people who contribute. Yeah. And we can't list them all out because it would be too long a list.
Yep. So that's good stuff. So and part of my, as I'm looking at my blog philosophy moving forward, especially that one that I was just talking about, somebody on Twitter or something I saw made some comment about when they blog a technical thing, they put a reminder in Outlook 6 months later to review that blog post and see if it's still current. And I'm like, I think I'm going to do that. At least my intention is that I'm going to do that.
That's tricky, though, especially, I know that you've been quite prolific over the years. I've got over 1,000 posts. I don't know how many you have. But, trying to even think about reviewing all that stuff is just, forget it.
Yeah. Well, some of them are more obvious than others.
Sure. The ones that seem to get, in WordPress, I use WordPress. I know that you use SharePoint 2010.
I hate to brag, but yeah, my blog is on SharePoint 2010.
Yeah. But, you get some analytics there, and you can at least see what people are going to a lot and check those posts and make sure that they're not sending people off into la la land.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a way I use PowerShell. So you can use PowerShell to pull down a web page and then get a list of all the links in the web page and then test. So I could write a thing to do that pretty easily. So there's a couple of people in the chat room are saying that my PowerShell post would probably be handy, so I might do that.
And you use PowerShell to download Chrome, I understand.
I do. That, and that's part of my campaign to never, ever open Edge, ever. So the joke used to be that I would only ever use Edge to download Chrome. And then I'm like, I don't even need it for that. I can just use PowerShell to download the installer. So yeah, the Go was different because of the Windows S mode, and I just wanted to play with it. But yeah, I don't. Mm-hmm.
Though Edge is getting the Chromium engine slid underneath it, so maybe Edge will become more useful. And
yeah, I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also not looking forward to that because I have so much fun ridiculing Edge.
Yeah.
And if it has the Chromium engine and has the extension framework that I'm used to, has profiles, I need that, then I won't be able to make fun of it anymore. I'm kind of going to miss that.
But also, at this point, why would you switch from the browser you already understand? Right?
I probably wouldn't.
I always wonder, when any company comes out with something that's sort of, I'm going to say half-assed, which is certainly what Edge was when it first came out. It wasn't a replacement for IE11. It was something worse.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you lose people right up front.
Yeah.
And then no matter how good you get, they always say, yeah, but like how many people use Apple Maps now? Not on purpose, because they really screwed that up in the beginning. So we all use Google Maps on our iOS devices, which is sort of crazy if you think about it.
Yep, you only get one chance to make a first impression, and
that's right. Something that you and I know really well.
Because I screw it up every time. And like Marc Chrisman says in the chat room, it's a byproduct of this whole MVP, the minimum viable product, and I think we all have different definitions of what the minimum viable product is, and when they miss it, it's tough.
Well, unfortunately, in software these days, I think people rush stuff. They get told they have to release on a date.
Yeah. As
opposed to you need to finish the thing that you're building and then we will release it.
Yeah.
And that it's just like launching a website. In the old days, you would launch on a date because someone had picked the date for no good reason.
Yep.
And that's often labeled MVP, even if it really is just shipped too early.
Just crap.
And that's not just Microsoft's problem. That's a lot of software companies these days.
Yep. So we're coming close on time. I guess a couple of things that I wanted to mention before we run out. The folks at SysKit ran into Tony. Well, I didn't run into him. It was planned. And at the MVP Summit, Tony Francola, one of the founders of the SysKit company, SP.Kit way back in the day, and had a couple of things that I wanted to promote for them. One of them is they published today a blog post I wrote for them on why documenting SharePoint is fun and valuable and how it can make you a hero. So you can have that one. And then
it also makes you more popular. I don't know if most people realize that.
The what?
It makes you more popular.
Everybody, and so this is one of those things, I do work for SysKit. It's an official paid gig, and they wanted this blog post, and one of the things that I always have to ask them is, do you want this written in a corporate professional voice, or do you want it written in my voice? Because I write very differently, and so you mentioned that it makes you more popular. I hit that hard at the blog post because they wanted it in my voice, so I indulged myself a little and did that. And so the other thing I've got going with them is I'm doing a webinar here in a couple of weeks on groups, and I did not get a link to that. I don't have a link to it.
I see a link there now.
In the notes. But I will put it in the show notes. Again, go to toddclinton.com/podcast427, and I'll have a link to the free SysKit webinar that I do on groups.
There it is. I found it.
Oh, well, throw that in the chat room.
Well,
you too can be a hero.
It's coming. It's coming. Everybody wants to hear more Todd.
They do. They do. So there's some other stuff, but again, we're kind of running late on time, so I will defer. Is there anything in the notes that we have not talked about that you really wanted to hit?
Nope.
Right. We will hit those some other time. So one of the things we like to give shouts outs to other groups and out there. Daniel Glenn in Nashville, they're having a SharePoint Saturday, June 15th, and they've got a call for speakers out right now. So if you'd love to go to Nashville and you're going to be in the area, you can go to spsnashville.org/CFS, call for speakers, and submit some sessions. If you are a budding new SharePoint or Office 365 person, this is a great place to get free content. It is also a great place to present content. If you've always wanted to present content and always been embarrassed or afraid, this is the place to do it. No better place to do it.
Yeah, you can, and a user group, a local user group is also a great option if you want to sort of get your feet wet in presenting. Some of the user groups in the New England area will do like a 10-minute, do a 10-minute, tip or trick kind of thing, or 5 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever you got.
Yep.
It's a great way to start figuring out whether you can stand up in front of people and not look as stupid as Todd and I do.
Yes, the bar is very low in those cases.
Yeah,
and so people get freaked out about that, and I guess, the thing with that is people are convinced they don't have anything to give, and they're absolutely wrong. And to look smart or to be of value, you really only need to provide one person with one thing. You don't have to know the product or the topic, to start to finish. You just need to give somebody in that audience the one thing they're like, oh my God, that's great, or that's how you do that, or whatever. And man, that's all it takes. And you look like a genius to those people, and you feel great. Highly recommend it.
Yep.
Okay, so for the self-promotion part, we're a couple days away from this, but Shane's doing a Power Apps all-day class in Omaha this Friday, which probably this will get produced, 6 weeks from Tuesday, so it'll probably be gone by then. But you can go get that. That is not free, but I think it's like $50 or something, so you can go to that. Dan Christian in the chat room wanted me to shout out that the SharePoint Saturday in Charlotte, North Carolina is August 10th, and he would like you all to come to that. And if he sticks a link in the chat room, I will put it in the show notes. But you should do that. That is my wife's birthday, which is another great or not great reason to go to Charlotte. I don't know.
You could have a mini Jill Clint birthday party in Charlotte.
There we go. I really look. It's like one of those things, your memory, the more times you mention it, the easier it is to remember. Every time I can mention my wife's birthday, I do, so I don't forget it. So that's,
We're having SharePoint Saturday. If we're going to just do this, we're SharePoint Saturday in New England, October 19th, I think, and that is a Synpraxis sponsored event. So you're on board with that, Todd.
I am. I had no idea.
Really, they're all over the place. Yeah, traveling from SharePoint Saturday to SharePoint Saturday is a really cool thing to do. It gets expensive, but it's still a lot of fun, and you can't help but learn all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah, it's great stuff. Next week, you and I are going to the SharePoint Exchange Forum, though it's called something else now, but it's SEF 2019 in Stockholm. Couldn't be more excited about that. I love Stockholm, love the community up there, and you and Julie are going to be there, which makes it even better. Yeah,
they changed it to Share and Evolve in Office 365 Forum. Same initials, though.
Yeah. But that's great. Jorn always puts on a great show, and so I look forward to that. And you beat me pasting the link just by a second, stinker.
Fast.
So when is the Collab Summit? When's ECS? I try to put those in order, but I don't remember when ECS is.
ECS is in May after the SharePoint conference.
Okay.
So we'll move that one down. So that ECS is the European Collaboration Summit. And it's becoming one of the biggest, best European conferences, and it's right after SharePoint conference. So if you're in Europe and you can't make it to the SharePoint conference in Las Vegas, you'll be able to see a lot of the same people, get a lot of the same content there.
Yeah. And then the SharePoint conference, May 21st through the 23rd. Shane and I are going to be there. We're doing an all-day session on SharePoint administration. I understand that you and Julie will also be there, spread the knowledge.
Yeah, we'll be there. Hopefully, knowledge spreading. Sure.
Excellent.
Seems like that would be a good idea.
Yeah. So that's the place to be. That's the big daddy of the SharePoint conferences this year. I went through the speaker list yesterday. We're looking for somebody, and it's Microsoft Senior Program Manager this and VP that and all of those things. And then they let folks like Marc and I and Shane in there. So that's they spread it around. That's going to be great. It's going to be in Vegas. Come out, join us there. And again, if you see Marc or Shane or I, for goodness sakes, come tap us on the shoulder and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. That if you're going to go to one conference and you're a SharePoint person once a year, I hate to say that because a lot of other conferences are awesome.
Yeah.
But that's Microsoft's biggest thing, right? So that's where you get all that marketing information, but also a lot of what's coming. And then that stuff all filters out to other conferences too. But Microsoft really, I think they had over 100 people at it last year.
Yeah, and it's just going to be bigger this year. So it's a great one. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. All right, Marc, thank you for your time. Thank you for suffering through all the technical difficulties we had at the beginning. I assure you I have saved all of these settings, and none of them will work the next time that we do this. But
yeah, good for you, Todd.
Boy. Yeah. So chat room, we'll be sticking around for a while to answer any questions or hang out. But I think Shane's going to be doing this by himself next week because I'll be in Europe with Marc. But then I think maybe Shane and I will be back together in 2 weeks. We'll have to see. So, well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.